So I'm about to upgrade to the new M4 MacBook Pro, but before I do, let's discuss the laptop I used every day for half a decade, the 2019 MacBook Pro, one of the last Intel Macs ever made. This is my review 5 years later. Let's talk about it. This is the mid-2019 base model MacBook Pro with an Intel Core i5 processor. While its specs were modest, even then, it was a solid choice for a college student like me. It left some features to be desired, which we'll discuss momentarily, but for the entirety of my college experience, it has held up fairly well. Let's talk about the generalities first. The laptop itself is thin, at just over 1/2 inch in height when folded and weighing about 3 pounds, making it incredibly portable, easy to handle, and open just by one hand. Great stuff. Now taking a look at the device when folded open, you'll see its gorgeous 13-inch display, the butterfly switch keyboard, and the innovative touch bar that I actually quite like, although it does have its drawbacks, in a moment of course. And at the sides, we have the infinitely limiting port selection of 2 USB-Cs on one side and a headphone jack on the other. Now this laptop was probably around the time I started college, the second most popular device at my university, only narrowly beaten by the MacBook Air due to its cheaper price of, I believe, $1,099. So the real question was, at the time, was the price difference worth it for that additional cost? Well, yes and no. I think especially for the base model, this MacBook Pro had a few limiting factors that we'll discuss momentarily that hindered its performance from hitting a higher ceiling than it does. But in terms of a moderate boost in performance, yes, this MacBook Pro is still worth it in my eyes compared to the Air of that time. In terms of performance, the laptop, like I said, is modest for today's programs, but it's still great for the typical day-to-day tasks for a college student, such as emailing, writing, note-taking, documentation, etc., just as it was 5 years ago. It really is a fantastic productivity machine, so long as your work is not too demanding. But for some programs I use, such as Final Cut Pro, that's when things start to change for this little laptop. As I stated before, having a base MacBook Pro does not mean you're getting the best pro-level performance, so I knew this machine isn't crazy powerful from the get-go. So it's not a shocker that for Final Cut Pro, my laptop does struggle. But despite its limitations, this laptop still allows me to fairly consistently produce weekly videos for my YouTube channels. And while I've experienced occasional slowdowns and crashes, the main challenge isn't the CPU, but the limited 8GB of RAM, which struggle to keep up with demanding tasks like video editing. With only 8GB of RAM, multitasking is challenging, especially during video editing sessions in Final Cut Pro. This often forces me to restart the program to clear my laptop's memory. Again, this was my choice, but for you watching, when purchasing a MacBook Pro and using it for professional applications, make sure you configure it with the right RAM, because I constantly have this screen pop up every 5 minutes while editing, and it doesn't go away until I restart my editing program. That's because this computer is really pushing itself. I can't help but feel guilty for pushing this laptop beyond its limits. It's done so much more than I ever expected. For everything it's supposed to do, schoolwork, writing, and daily tasks, it has performed exceptionally well, just as you'd expect from a MacBook Pro, even after 5 years. For heavier tasks like video editing though, it can struggle under pressure, which is understandable for a base model. So I'm not disappointed in the performance, not at all. Matter of fact, it has done way more for me than I give it credit for. But in regards to the real cons of this device, well, let's talk about them. When I purchased my MacBook Pro back in 2019, I was honestly shocked at how excellent it was coming from a MacBook Air from many years prior. Despite that though, after using this thing for 5 years, I found a few small nitpicks listed here, and I'll highlight the most important ones. Firstly, the storage. Now, like I said, I made the choice to get the starter model of this device because its price was the most appealing to me. But I speak from experience when I constantly repeat how companies must have their devices start with more. For anyone buying a laptop, I recommend going for at least 512GB of storage if you can afford it, if you plan on using it long term. By just installing a few essential programs like the Microsoft Office suite for school, I quickly found myself running low on the 128GB of storage my laptop has, often needing to delete files to free up space. And while that did encourage me to stay organized, a good habit, it did interrupt my workflow at times. For a solution, I'd recommend using an external SSD, of which I have many with my top picks and links down below. They're definitely a good option if you're low on storage, but they're not as convenient as just having more storage, leading to when I eventually reach the maximum capacity on my integrated SSD, I'm constantly interrupted and need to stop my work to clear it out. And another interruption I have to address is the touch bar. Yes, I know I said I like it, and I really do. It's a super nice and convenient extra feature to help you navigate certain programs and use for small gestures, but in my experience, I'm glad Apple decided to shelve it for now with the new MacBook Pro. Pros. As a student who has taken many online exams, I occasionally encountered issues with the touch bar crashing, leaving me unable to adjust the brightness. This was a pretty minor inconvenience that also caused some pretty awkward moments, like needing to reposition myself closer to the screen when the auto brightness dimmed unexpectedly. Even now, its weekly crashes will require me to go to the terminal and restart it. And in an exam scenario, when it crashed on me the few times, it was a challenge for me. A negligible challenge, but a challenge nonetheless. Another concern is the butterfly keyboard, which, while controversial, hasn't been a major issue for me. Occasionally, debris has caused keys to jam temporarily, but overall, it's been functional and reliable for my needs. The only significant issue I've faced came in 2023, when a glitch caused my laptop to continuously index its files, leading to noticeable slowdowns. Disabling the search function resolved it, but it's something that I have to deal with now. No search bar. But I've managed. This laptop has managed, despite everything I've done to it. Frankly, despite its limitations, this laptop has been a dependable companion throughout my education and YouTube journey, probably the most major player in both. And so to move on to the pros, there are a ton. Starting off, this touchpad is incredible. I'm serious with this. These Apple MacBook trackpads are the best I've ever used. They have a glass outer chassis and use haptic feedback, force touch, instead of a mechanical button to make that satisfying click. I can't emphasize this enough, but the Apple trackpads are really good. So good, in fact, that the company even sells them outside of the laptops. They're great for editing. Moreover, the laptop's display, still to this day, no complaints. The display is genuinely incredible. Vivid colors, excellent brightness, and a delight to use for any type of content. It is wonderful. Even the bezels, which have shrunk on the new MacBook Pros over the last few years, are still fairly small and not noticeable when you're working on the device. And one of this laptop's standout features is its portability, a key factor for any college student. Now, it's not as good as the MacBook Air, but the 13-inch MacBook Pro has been perfect for me. It manages to somehow balance on some incredibly small college desks and is super easy to use when on the go. I did consider purchasing the 16-inch M4 MacBook Pro, but I decided to opt for the 14 one for now, just because I know I'll be taking it on the go just as I did with this laptop. And that portability factor is huge for any college student. This laptop was honestly great for that. And now, leading to my own personal experience, despite the complaints I listed, this laptop truly exceeded all of my expectations given the price. The fact that it's a base model of the MacBook Pro and it's from 2019. I still edit all of my videos on it. I'll soon transition to the new laptop, but this one, for right now, is the editor, and it still manages. For a little while, until the RAM cuts it short. But if I knew I would have gotten this deep into editing, I would have gone for the configuration with more RAM and storage. That was my choice back then, and a lesson I've learned. So for you watching, I speak from experience when I say focus on your needs and look deep into what you're going to use your laptop for. For school, this was perfect. Honestly, more than enough. The 2019 MacBook Air is still constantly being used by my classmates and will probably be good enough for their workloads for another 2, 3, maybe even 4 years or more for them. But for me, it's time to upgrade. I'll keep using this computer for as long as I can for studying, scripting, documentation, etc. because it's still completely usable for those needs. But for editing, we need to upgrade to the new one. Nevertheless, I'm happy with my 2019 MacBook Pro. It can do a little bit of everything, and those drawbacks are not major issues for me. So all in all, I'd say that my 2019 MacBook Pro, one of the last Intel MacBooks, 5 years later, is still perfectly usable for my standard purposes. And that wraps up my review of the 2019 MacBook Pro, an oldie, but definitely a goldie. What are your thoughts? Are you still using an Intel MacBook, or have you upgraded to the M series models? Let me know in the comment section down below. I have more information about this device in the description, so be sure to check it out. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and without further ado, my name is Seeroos. It's spelled like Cyrus, pronounced like Sea Rooster, just take out the turn. Thank you very much for watching, and have a wonderful day. Peace.